David, I'm seeing a lot of art books, a lot of artworks, pictures, figurines. What do you think is the importance of art within fashion?
I think fashion is design primarily. I mean, it's serving a function. People have to wear it.
Yeah.
And I think art hasn't got that kind of purpose or intention. So when fashion is purely about an idea and a process and an expression, then I think it comes close to art. But primarily, it's design.
Yeah. What got you interested in fashion? What made you decide to actually start doing it?
I think the thing that excited me about fashion was in the 90s. Designers like Jean-Paul Gaultier and Vivienne Westwood and Comme des Garçons were doing really radical stuff, and there were artists like Björk who were very exciting, and the way they dressed were very interesting, and that excited me. And I was a club kid, and I enjoyed the nightlife and going to clubs. I saw people dressed in quite extreme gear, and that was very exciting. And I think that I was more interested in art at school and wanted to pursue that, but that explosion of rave culture and club culture in the 90s is what shifted me from being interested in art to more pop culture and fashion. And so I've started a Tumblr, and I've started collecting those things and posting them, and it's almost before I put any of my own work on that Tumblr, which won't be my fashion work, it will be other things that I've done, like the Evil work and New Flex and these parties that are through more subculture related stuff. I will first want to pay my dues to all the designers and things that influenced me.
Mali was telling me about your boycott fashion video. How did that come about, and what's the idea behind it?
Well, it's me boycotting a season, really. I don't want to produce a line for winter. So I closed my shop and I made a range of t-shirts, which there were just 16 of, and each one was different, made of gangster rap and hip-hop and metal artist t-shirts, and I cut them up and spliced them back together. And I worked with a graphic designer called Ben Johnson, who did the same using other fashion designers' ad campaigns. He cut them up and he cut up catwalk footage, and he stuck it back together, re-photographed it. And the same, so in a way the process for both of us was very similar. I took photographs of the t-shirts, cut them up, collaged them back together and gave them to a pattern maker and seamstress who then reconstituted them. And he did the same using real mass fashion advertising material and messed around and created something quite just anti-establishment, I suppose, because I wanted to just show something that felt like stepping outside of how the fashion industry works at the moment, and not having a season, just doing something that I wanted to do and keeping it pure.
And I read that you closed down your shop in Long Street. Why?
it's too limiting for me. I can't really do what I want to do there, because it means I have to worry about making clothes that are going to sell enough to keep the shop going, and it's really expensive having a shop. So the pressure of that is not something I want to relate and include in my work. The commercial strain, the financial strain is not something I want involved in my process. And that's the thing that kills the creativity, and I don't want that to happen. So I'd rather not have a shop and be able to do what I want, when I want, and how I want, and not have to worry about things like seasons. Because I don't see why I should, really.
As a writer, I read a lot about other writers, and one of my favorite fashion writers, Eric Wilson, said, with fashion, as a fashion writer, if you lose your interest in your subject, you can't write anymore. Your writing will be just another run of the mill. What is it for you as a designer that keeps you interested in fashion?
I always try and do something that's not really about fashion. It's about clothing or history or music or a subculture or like a dance movement, or whatever is interesting me at the time will filter into my chosen field, which is fashion. But fashion itself is not, especially now, not the most interesting thing, I don't think. I think it's incredibly repetitive and safe and commercial and mass, and there's very little fringe, there's very little stuff happening with young designers. I mean, if you think back about 5-6 years ago, there was a huge explosion of young designers, even 10 years ago, and now it just seems so safe and boring, to be quite honest.
Are there any that you've seen lately that have sort of excited you locally or internationally?
I mean, not young designers, because I'm not seeing many of them getting exposure.
Yeah.
And not a lot of up-and-coming designers, but there's always the usual suspects that do the most exciting work year after year. And I mean, that's Comme des Garçons and, you know, Prada on the mainstream side of things, she always pushes forward. But there just seems to be a lack of edge at the moment. But in terms of up-and-coming designers, though, which I should actually mention now, because I don't think it's happening in fashion very much here, but in photography and graphic design. I mentioned earlier Ben Johnson, the photographers Cope Figgins, and in the art world there's exciting stuff happening. Yeah. I mean, Georgina Greatrix, Julia Clark, who's been doing it for many years. She's not an up-and-coming artist, she's an established artist, but they continue to do exciting work and keep me very inspired. Yeah. But in fashion, I think South African fashion has gone incredibly safe. I don't see the excitement that was there a few years ago. But it's tough because you can't just put that stuff out there. I mean, at some stage you've got to try and make a career out of it, and so it's hard for people. I can understand why that is the case. And times are tough, and it's easy for me to sit and complain about being boring. But you know, it's just reality. I think the focus now is on mainstream culture, and you see people that are quite alternative, posting and sharing things that are very much from the mainstream in an almost ironic way.
Do you think it's just outdated the way we do things like fashion week and all of that?
Well, I mean, in South Africa, there are no real stores that buy, there are no real buyers, and there's very few magazines that print, you know, avant-garde or really edgy or forward things. I mean, we've lost some of the mags that used to do that. Yeah. So, is there really a point having a whole lot of fashion weeks? I mean, we have so many of them. We've got more than London, we've got more than Milan. I don't know why. I mean, still we almost. We had a huge booming industry with lots of stores eager to buy and support the local designers. Then I would understand having all these fashion weeks, but I mean, one is probably enough. No one really blinks if one designer skips a season, or you know, no one's queuing up at the store when we launch a new season. No one, you know, there's some kind of relaxed feeling about fashion here. There isn't a real strong industry behind it. There's not a lot of local designers advertising in magazines. I mean, we just don't have that culture here. So in a way, we've got quite a play industry. It is a little bit play. I think a lot of people think it is a lot bigger and more important than it really is. Yeah. But how many people really care, I don't know. I think it's debatable. Yeah. I mean, cool. We've got a long way to go still. and for me, I will invest in things when, like I say, when and how I choose to, because I've learned in time of being a designer here that it's actually the only way to having your own store. You carrying all the risk. And I think if a few more stores actually started buying from ranges, you could spread your risk out, and those stores would have to obviously carry a lot more risk. But I think that's their responsibility to kind of choose stuff that they're going to sell. And I don't want to discourage people, because I think the more people that do things, the better. Yeah. So I think I would encourage people to go out there and do things in a small way, but don't try and sort of think that having a catwalk show at Fashion Week is going to be any better than doing it at the Biscuit Mill or in a little alleyway or behind Clark's restaurant on a Friday night on a skate ramp, because I think those kind of things are far more important in terms of creating energy and excitement around fashion and design and art. Yeah. I think this obsession with like having made it because you're in the Elle magazine or you're showing at Fashion Week is very narrow-minded, and what we need a lot more of is independent creatives just doing stuff and putting it out there, and even just posting it, or putting it online in this very small way. It's so easy to reach people nowadays. We don't actually need to have these very expensive shows and things anymore. So that's, I actually would rather, what I was saying earlier was more of an encouragement that you don't have to do things in this very set, structured way. We're in a space where we can be very creative and playful and break rules, because the rules are really there for very, I mean, there's no real reason why we have all these rules. So that's, I would actually just rather say, encourage people to do that.